Well, alrighty then. Welcome to Quixotic Heights, the show where we explore the minds behind the stories that move us. I'm your host, Amy M. Lee, and today we're joined by the incredibly talented JB Caine. She's an author, storyteller, a literary force with the gift for crafting characters and worlds that linger long after the first or the last page. In this episode, we're going to dive into JB's creative process, the inspiration behind her work, and the real life experiences that shape her fiction. So, whether you're an aspiring writer, an avid reader, you don't want to miss this conversation. I am so thrilled to have you, JB. Welcome to the Quixotic Heights podcast.
Oh, and I'm thrilled to be here, Amy. And by all means, please feel free to call me Jen. JB looks great on a book cover, but it's kind of pretentious on a human. So, but
Thank you for letting us know, because you never know. Some authors really want to stick to their pen name.
Yeah, no. I mean, we'll stick to the pen name sort of, but like I said, Jen sounds so much better on a person.
Well, let's just start there. Why did you pick JB and pick a pen name?
So my legal name is Jennifer Bell. So that's where the JB comes from. And then Caine is a name that since I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, it's just always been in my head. Now, back in those days, I was, daydreaming about being a singer. And my name then, my stage name was Caine. But anytime I've had sort of daydreams about various types of other careers that would put me in a public eye or whatever, that name has just always been in my head, and I'm not sure where it came from. It just sort of appeared there and never left.
And that's Caine, Caine.
Correct.
Because there's obviously different ways to spell that. I wonder
Correct. Not like the nasty biblical brother. It's the other. It's the other spelling.
Huh. I wonder if you had a past life or something that, who knows?
It's possible. It's possible. It's also equally possible I just heard the name somewhere and it just flowed well with mine, and it just kind of stuck like a song lyric. I mean, I don't know, but I'm happy to have it there, and it served its purpose when I was ready to start with a pen name, which I chose to use a pen name because my legal name is just so common that I felt like it would just get lost in the shuffle. So
yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
that's part of the author brand, the things that you don't really necessarily think about until you're like in the thick of it.
Correct.
I'll be honest with you, when we booked you as a guest, I was like, I don't know where to start with JB, because you have done so many amazing things, so many amazing books, a series, you got a podcast, all that other stuff. So I was like, okay, let's just start with NaNoWriMo 2019.
Oh, yes. where the professional part of it all began. I've actually been making up stories in my head probably since I was a little kid. Definitely a byproduct of being an only child with a creative sensibility. But I was an English teacher for 30 years in Tampa. And about 2019, I decided to challenge myself to do NaNoWriMo, the 50,000 words in the month of November, because I'd always wanted to be a writer. There were two things I wanted more than anything in my life. One was to be a mom, one was to be a novelist. And I very happily achieved the one. I have an amazing daughter. But then I was thinking to myself, well, I'm starting to think about, being a few years out from retiring from teaching. If I want to be a writer, I need to start establishing myself and have some books written and start kind of getting my name out there. So I decided to challenge myself to that in 2019. And it was really arduous for me because I had never forced myself into that kind of discipline, especially while teaching full time. And so I did do it. I did complete it. I quote won NaNoWriMo. And the result of that was the first draft of Rise of the Moon, which was my first published novel. And it clocked in by the end at somewhere in the neighborhood of 75,000 words, I think. So right in the sweet spot for young adult fiction. And it was just I discovered that beginnings are easy and endings are easy and middles are hard. So,
Yeah, because you always hear about the sagging middle, right? And
yeah. And it just, I think because I had never done anything of that length. I had written stuff, but never anything of the scope of a novel. And I just didn't understand what I needed my process to look like at that point. And so Rise of the Moon was just a series of experiments for how do I discipline myself to get this done, especially if life is happening outside my office door. Like, how do I make that happen? And fortunately, my family was really supportive, and they just came to the conclusion that for about 2 hours a day, they weren't going to see me. So, unfortunately, my daughter was old enough at that point that she didn't need my constant attention. So it was.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
That just is a testament to you already in terms of your grit and tenacity and trying to get your dream lifted, right? Because NaNoWriMo is not for the faint of heart. And for anybody who's ever done National Novel Writing Month, where crazy authors from across the world spend 1 month trying to finish their novel or write 50,000 words, you literally are eating, sleeping, thinking, like everything is about your book, and if you're lucky, someone will, put some food underneath the door for you.
Right.
And you never come out. So yeah, I mean, congratulations. And so you went on to write several series. I think one of them, though, you are just about launching with Betsey Kulakowski, who is, right? She's the author of the Veritas Codex series, and
Correct.
Also the first guest that we had on this podcast. Tell us more about that series and your collaboration with her.
Well, so Betsey and I are launching the Manifest Destiny series, which is, think, the Da Vinci Code plus the Librarians plus Friday the 13th, the series, not the slasher movies, but the Cursed Object series, all kind of meshed into one. And you have these two sisters who come from a family of folks who have been part of this secret order founded by Christopher Wren, their distant ancestor. And it basically, the Aegis Order keeps haunted, cursed, magical objects away from the hands of people who would use them for ill-gotten gains or whatever, and tries to keep dangerous magic out of the world. And of course, it's a secret society. Nobody really knows about it. The sisters are aware of it. And in fact, Dr. Eliza Wren, who is the older sister, works sort of in the physics department, creating things like containment fields and stuff like that, but not field work. And then because of a dastardly murder at the beginning of the novel, they are thrown into field work and have to go in search of the Veil of Secrets, which is the title of the novel. So wow. That's where it all kicks off. And we're so excited. It was such a fun thing for us to write together. Betsey and I have worked together on a number of projects. Of course, we're podcast co-hosts with Jenny LaBranche. And we are also, we've done some short stories and things like that together for Autumn Tales. And also we're working on a novel called Ghosts and Gumbo with Jenny, the three of us together. But Betsey and I just had so much fun. We wrote the entire novel in 2 weeks.
That's unreal.
It was.
I think Betsey once told, maybe you told us, but it was like, you guys are the same brain, the same person.
We really are. We really are.
Yeah. And I've always been curious to know how that works when you're collaborating with an author and you're co-authoring something, who takes what part, how does the research go? How does the conversation go when you flush out all these things? Maybe you can give us a little insight.
Sure. Well, that's been, and it's funny because at WriterCon last year, Betsey and I actually did a workshop on working with a partner, working with, collaboration. And then this novel came up after that. So that's sort of a funny thing. But even though Betsey and I sort of share a brain on a lot of things, our processes are very different. So Betsey can sit down and crack out 4,000, 5,000 words in a day. I can't do that. That's just not how my brain works. I tap out at about 1,500 words in a day. That's kind of, unless I can come back to it like a few hours later, but I just, that's about as much as I can put out at a time. But in terms of our writing voice, they're similar enough that when people read it, I think they would be challenged to pick out what Betsey wrote versus what I wrote. So my sister read the novel as one of our beta readers, and she said that she tried to figure out which parts were mine. And funnily enough, she attributed some of Betsey's parts to me because of some of the supernatural stuff that was contained therein. But yeah, I mean, we basically, I think technically I have to give credit. I think this particular series was Betsey's brainchild. And then it just sort of went crazy when we started talking about it, because I'm game for anything, but Betsey is very much a pantser, and I'm not. So I discovered in 2019 that I need to at least have an outline. I'm not rigid to that outline, so I'm not a full-on plotter, but I'm like a plantser. So I have to have something in between. I need to at least have an outline to work from, and that's not how Betsey works at all. So in those initial meetings, like, I had to say, okay, we need to at least bullet point some stuff for me plot-wise, so that I can make sure that the flow, my brain is going where we need it to go. But that having been said, we alternated chapters. So she would write one, I would write one, back and forth, back and forth. But I never knew what was going to happen in her chapter, except for maybe one major incident that we decided had to happen in that chapter. So what would happen is that she would write a part, and then we'd get together over Microsoft Teams, and we'd chat about it. And we'd talk about what happened, what we liked, what maybe needed to be edited. And then we'd say, okay, what major thing needs to happen in the next chapter? Okay, great. Then I'd go off and write. And then I'd put it in the Google Doc, and then she'd read it, and she'd make comments on the side. And then we'd meet again, and we'd go back and forth and back and forth. And that's just how we did it. And we literally had a rough draft. Now, granted, it's not a long novel. These were intended to be almost like chunky novellas, if you want to think of it that way. We wanted them to be fun airport reads. That's sort of how we thought of it, because we're always, when we're in airports, we're always like reading on the plane, reading, waiting for the plane, whatever. And so that's what we wanted for this series, is we wanted it to be somewhere right around the 60,000 ish, where you could read it in a day or two. But it would feel like a roller coaster. And that's kind of where we went with it. And it worked out exactly as even better than we planned, to be honest. That's an
interesting process. And in 2 weeks, that's amazing. It's also, I mean, you're right. The chunky novella is a great way to describe it, because when I think of airport reads, I'm thinking 40 to 50,000 words, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe. It's almost like a choose your own adventure. Like, you could write a chapter, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to just take that and go with it, run with it. And then you guys collaborate together. That's wonderful.
It's funny that you picked that out, because I actually just wrote one of those. So I'm wondering if maybe subconsciously that kind of, because I wrote one based on the Loch Ness Monster. And I that was the last thing that I had finished right before Betsey and I did this. So I wonder if maybe somehow you've tapped into something there, and it sort of helped me work into that process.
Interesting. We'll go with that.
yeah, that kind of is very insightful on your part. So,
well, let's talk about your books, though. That yours and yours alone. You've got a few series, is that correct? Or
so I have the when we talked about Rise of the Moon earlier, that ended up being the Arcana Trilogy. So there's 3 books. That one is complete. It was a 3-book series done, although some novellas or short stories may pop up as sort of like bonus somewhere along the line, but that is a tarot based, very witchy sort of girl power paranormal series. Definitely not romance forward. I don't tend to write romance forward. I'm much more adventure forward in my writing. So that's that trilogy. And then I have the Ironshield Shadow series, which is a high fantasy sword and sorcery, again, very adventure forward series that is sort of very Dungeons and Dragons flavored, I guess, if you wanted to kind of go with that. It's obviously not in that universe, but I actually wrote that based on I coached debate for years, and when the pandemic hit, my debate team came to me and said, "Hey, look, we're having some real mental health struggles with the isolation. Will you run a Zoom D&D game for us, because we know you used to play in college?" And so I started doing these regular Zoom D&D games with them, and a couple of the folks who were part of that created a homebrew campaign, and then we played for years together. And then that grew into the Ironshield Shadow series, which will be, I think now, we were going to make it 6 books, but we just had a meeting, and I think it's going to end up being 7 books, because I give those two, they're not kids anymore, but those 2 young people who collaborated on that, I give them co-creator credit, and they get a third of the sales and all that, because it wouldn't exist without them. So that's Lee and Sam, and so that's that series. And then I just started the Choose Your Own Adventures, as I mentioned, which I call the Your Story series, because Choose Your Own Adventure is trademarked and I don't own it, so I don't call them that. But it's that format, and they're cryptid based, which, as you might imagine, made Betsey very happy. So. The first one is The Creature in Loch Ness, which is set at Loch Ness. They're middle grade books, obviously, because that's sort of the target for that type of book. And then Bigfoot will be next, and then Mothman, and so forth and so on. And we shall see.
So cool.
Yeah.
You're doing those Your Stories, Choose Your Adventure type books.
Yeah.
Those bring back a lot of good memories for me.
I was obsessed as a kid. I loved them so much.
How do you develop your characters? Are they based on anybody in particular?
Well, it kind of depends. So I have a mix of completely fictitious characters and characters that are loosely based or amalgamated from people that I know. And I think probably most writers are that way. But because of the nature of the fact that I started writing some of my novels when I was still actively teaching. So I've been retired and writing full time for 2 years now. But for the first few years, I was still very actively teaching every day. So I have shamelessly used characters based on some of my former students in my books. They know it if they've been in the book. There's nobody that I've thrown into the book who doesn't already know that they're there. Rise of the Moon, the 2 primary characters are based on former students of mine, Jessica and Sean, who I am still in touch with and talk to regularly. Jessica's getting ready to get married. Sean just finished his master's degree. I mean, it's crazy to think about it. But even the Loch Ness book, there was a former student who was present at the moment of creative inspiration. So he got to be the obligatory best friend character that's in all of those books. There's always sort of that extra sidekick character. And so that's Jake. And then, of course, the Ironshield characters, many of them were based on character ideas that came from that group of kids that I was playing D&D with during the pandemic. So,
what about a character that's loosely based on you?
There's an ongoing debate. And I did a young writers workshop actually at a local library and did a character section last week. And we actually discussed this a little bit. To some degree, I think every character is you on some level. Right. So whether it's your shadow self or closer to the self that people see, or maybe some part of you that you wish you were more. And I think all characters are me. But to be honest, I think that of all the characters I've written, the 2 that are closest to being who I am in terms of sort of their personality and kind of who they are, is the main character from book 2 of the Arcana series, which is Aria Rush. And she is, this is teenage me, obviously. But she is kind of a little bit of a loner, not because she wants to be, but she sort of is in some ways. And she always has a lot going on in her head that most people don't see. And that's definitely how I am. I mean, I am very conscious of the face that I present to people. So unless you know me well, you probably don't know what's going on behind all of that. I mean, it's not like I'm not who you see I am, but there's always like all these other conversations going on in my head at any given time. And then the other one would be from the Ironshield Shadow series, Daijira, who is, she is actually a lamia. So she is part snake, part human. But she is, let's just say she's very adaptable to any situation that she finds herself in. She's very much a survivor, very good-hearted, but hasn't always been in situations where she got to show that. So that's made her extraordinarily practical. Even though she has a good heart, she's also an extreme realist. So
for some reason, the MacGyver popped in my head when you were describing her.
It's in terms of being resourceful, I think that's probably true. She's not so much an engineer, but she's definitely very quick-witted, and she can talk her way into or out of almost anything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm always so impressed with authors who can write a series of books where they're able to keep track, right, of the storyline, the plot, the character development, the arc, the world building, if there's world building involved. How do you, because you're more of a pantser or a plancer than a plotter.
Yeah.
You're more.
I'm a plancer. I'm like in between.
You're a plancer. Yeah. So how do you like keep all that in check?
So I actually have a notebook that I just jot down notes in, and it's not sort of a formal outline like you would expect for a plotter, where I have like, Scrivener with all this stuff, or plotter with all this stuff. And I don't really have that, but I do have extensive notes about places and characters and how I see that character developing. And for Ironshield, I have a map for one of the settings in the Arcana series. So the way that I find the houses that the characters live in almost universally is I go on like realtor.com and I find a house in the right area. And then bonus, if that particular realty listing happens to have a floor plan of the house. And then I just print that stuff out, and that goes in my notebook to help me keep, settings. And then I live on Google Earth for setting.
Wow.
I definitely, I'll sit there and I'll have that window up for the entire course of the story as I'm writing it, where I look, okay, on this street, this happens and this goes this way. And, looking at the street view and what the character would see and all that kind of stuff. So I do take a lot of notes. I do print out some things, but it isn't in a collection of organized notes that any normal human would be able to decipher if they found it. It's like the books are all mixed in together. There's drawings of characters over here. It's yeah, so
that's really cool. Again, I'm just so fascinated about how different authors approach their work and how they track things. And because like if you go in my work, like there's like scribble marks everywhere. There's save the cat planning, all that stuff. And I'm thinking maybe one day it'll be in a museum somewhere. I mean, it's just, you never know.
Don't we all think that though? Because I think the same thing. I have my notebook over here, and I think I actually bring it with me to the workshops that I do for kids, because I'm like, I want them to see that the writing process is messy for most people. I mean, I've talked to some other people who they get up rigidly at this time of day and they go in their office for 2 hours and I'm like, I am not that person. I'm just not. It's not that I'm not that disciplined. It's just that I've got too many things going on. But I'm the same way. I have my notebook and I'm like, someday somebody's going to want this, or it's going to sell on eBay or something, and it'll be.
Hey, let's just throw it out. Just throw it out in the world and manifest it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's funny because in regards to objects, every time I write a book, I usually will go to, well, my favorite sort of metaphysical store near me has closed, so I have to find a new place. But I usually buy an object that to me is like a talisman for that book.
Mm.
So I haven't bought one for Veil of Secrets yet. So Betsy and I are going to have a conversation about that. But I usually do it during the writing process, but I guess because Betsy and I wrote it so fast, I didn't really have time to do that. But yeah, so I have all these little talismans in my office that go with the various books that I've written. And I think the same thing about those. Like someday these are going to be like hot items on eBay.
Be touring your home like a Jane Austen kind of thing. You never know, you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it'll be in glass, right? Little glass cabinet.
That's very cool. Was there a character that you didn't really intend to create, but somehow just kind of crept in and surprised you?
Sure. I mean, that kind of happens often, where I'll write somebody and then they'll just be so great, I have to keep them for a lot longer than I intended. So in the Veil of Secrets, that was Randall, who is the archivist for the Aegis Order. And I thought he would be a fun character, but when Betsy read Randall's part, well, when I wrote Randall's part, the first one, I was like, I love him. I love him so much. And then she read it. She was like, oh my gosh, I love Randall. And then everybody who's read the book has said the same thing. They just adore Randall. So Randall will now be in all the books.
You might have to do a spin-off and he has his own series.
Oh, we've already planned it. There will be a short story because Randall also has a cat. So Tiberius and Randall will be they'll get their own little short story or novella at some point. Just because they're just so lovable. So that's the most recent one, but that happens to me quite often actually, where I'll start a character thinking it's going to just be this minor character that is like a little NPC that pops in and then pops out. And then somehow they get a hold of me and they just refuse to leave. So.
Are any of your books on audiobook?
Well, so here's the thing. I do have Kinvara, which is I guess novelette, because it's shorter than a novella, on Audible. And I use mostly because I wanted to experiment with what an AI reader sounded like. But I've thought about this and I've had conversations with multiple people. And even though AI readers are extremely economical, right? Because it's expensive to hire a voice actor and, you know, get a sound engineer to do the sound, and all of that. But I really think I would rather have humans read my work, even though I did do that. So basically the only reason my stuff isn't on Audible at this point is either time or money. So since we do have the podcast, I actually have pretty good recording equipment. And my husband is a musician, so he's got pretty good sound editing equipment. So if I were so inclined, I could read my own if I, which I have it sort of on my list to do that with Rise of the Moon as an experiment. I also have one of the kids that was part of that D&D group who is, he has the most phenomenal voice. He should be a voice actor. He's just unbelievable. He can do accents. He can do voice. I mean, he's phenomenal. Shout out to you, John, if you hear this. But he and I have talked about doing the audio book for the Ironshield series, where I would read all of the female-led chapters and he would read all of the male-led chapters with sort of different voices, because it's a shifting perspective novel. So different voices based on whose chapter we're looking at. So these are all things I want to do. But again, it's time and money. Time and money.
Time and money, absolutely. I mean, I just got all three of my trilogy books, you know, on Audible, and that was a huge.
I remember you saying something about that in sort of an announcement that you were doing that. That's so exciting.
It's a huge accomplishment, but at the same time, you're right. It's time and money. And with my second one, Snow in Seattle, I had a narrator and it just didn't work out. I mean, she narrated most of the book.
Oh, wow.
So we had to start over, which, I won't go into why, but it was just one of those things where it's just time and money. But, have you ever listened to, for example, Matthew McConaughey narrating stories for bedtime stories through Calm?
Heck yeah, I have. On Calm, the Calm app, it.
The Calm
Absolutely.
app, right? I'm like, do that, JB. I mean, Jen, you could totally just have people subscribe. I mean, you have enough books, and you need to write more.
Yeah.
I don't know, just throwing it out there.
And I definitely, like I said, it's on my list of stuff to do. And I mean, I was a speech coach for 25 years. So, I mean, I would hope that I could, with a little bit of practice, do an okay job with voices. And certainly I know how all the names would be pronounced, and I would know where I want the correct emphasis on the right syllable. But I would like to. I actually did do a sample chapter of the first section of Ironshield, because I just wanted to hear what my voice sounded like, because the voice you hear is not your actual voice.
Yes.
So I wanted to hear what it sounded like, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I should actually post it on my website for folks who might be interested, just for fun. But yeah, it was actually not bad. But I think I would prefer to have humans do it, because I once I listened to Kinvara back with the AI voice. I mean, I left it up there because why not? But it wasn't horrible, but it didn't have any soul. And I think, as much as I recognize that AI is a tool, and it's definitely a tool, especially if you are, you have sort of some economic challenges with trying to do what you want to do because you're just starting out, and maybe you don't have, a bank of 10 grand sitting there waiting for you to do cool stuff with your books, which most of us don't. So I get that AI is a tool, but I think there are some things I think that if a human soul needs to be part of it, then you just can't substitute that. And in fact, I'm redoing all of the covers for Ironshield now, because initially when I did them, I created art through AI. I highly curated it, and it was stuff I did myself, but I'm actually rolling all that stuff over, and I'm going to be hiring cover artists, and I even have some sketches in there, and I'm in negotiations too, when I put out the compendium, when the series is done, that it'll all have human generated art as opposed to any AI art, because like I said, I understand the practical, that's the Daijiro side of me, the practical use of that. But I think art isn't art unless there's humans.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think AI is a great tool. It certainly can't replace that human soul that you talked about, because we are creative. We approach it from a different lens. And I also am a believer that we pay our artists what they deserve. It's own work, our own creativity, whether it be our voice, whether it be, paintings or our books, or even speaking engagements. It's so hard to find speaking engagements that are actually paid, because you prepare for these, you tailor them towards the audience, you've got travel and all this other stuff. And so, yeah, I 100% believe in human and paying the artist for their work. And that's what I did too with my books. It's like, I could have went the AI route, but first of all, I mean, I have Vietnamese words in there, so that's going to be a challenge anyway. For AI to read. But then secondly, it's just that human or that humanness that helps us to laugh, to cry, to whatever, to truly feel the books. But okay, so let's go on and talk about your publishing journey. Can you share, are you indie, traditional, hybrid? How did you go about getting your books published?
Yes, is the answer to that. When I started, when I finished Rise of the Moon, I did sort of the obligatory query letter to agents. I queried agents. I sent stuff out to a couple of small publishing firms as well. But then as I was starting that process, the pandemic hit. And nobody was taking on new clients, and nobody, so I just basically, after a year of querying, and I got some interest, but they said, we like what you sent us, but we're just not taking on new clients right now. And that was the response I got from anyone who bothered to respond. Most of the people didn't bother to respond. But eventually I just was like, I just want this out there. So I took it upon myself to learn KDP, because at that point we were all at home anyway, so we had lots of time. So I went on and learned Kindle Direct Publishing, and I had some photography that I had done when I used to have a photography business that actually was the basis for the Arcana stories. It's like where the original thought came from. I was doing photography to create like the major arcana of a tarot deck. And so I picked the moon card as sort of where the first book started. So I used that for my original cover. And I did sort of my own little cover with that. And it was okay. Like I wasn't mad about it. It came out pretty good. I am not great at Photoshop, but it wasn't terrible. Like you didn't look at it and go, okay. I have a good eye for stuff. I just don't have the skill set. So I did that with the first two books because I was, I just wanted to get them out there. And then I hired a cover artist that I knew. And I said, can you zhuzh these up a little bit? And then we got version 2 of the covers, still with the same photographs, but she zhuzhed them up and made it look a little better. And then about that time, I started becoming acquainted with a lot of writers online, including Micah Campbell, who had me on his podcast, and he had started a small publishing business. And this is actually also how Betsey and I met, is that I had written a short story for him for Autumn Tales, which is a charity horror anthology that his company was putting out. And then I said, hey, look, I don't know if you're still interested in taking authors. I don't know if my stuff is a fit. And he's like, if you don't send me your book, we're going to have a conversation. So I sent him Rise of the Moon, and Anatolian Press published the entire trilogy. So to that degree, that was kind of a small publisher. I don't know if you'd call him a hybrid publisher, but a small publisher, maybe hybrid publisher. But then recently I started, because I did the Ironshield series entirely on my own through KDP, because since I had those two former students collaborating with me, I didn't want to deal with the contract crazy. And, if you're getting a traditional publishing contract and you're lucky if you're getting 15%, and then you're splitting that 3 ways. I mean, why? Right. That's $1. Maybe. And so that I just decided to keep control over that, and published it myself. And so that journey has led me to create Busy Quill Press, which is a fledgling small publishing company. So at this point, I'm in the process. The Veil of Secrets will be the first fictional title that Busy Quill Press is publishing. Because I feel like I know it well enough now. I know kind of the business side of it well enough that I feel like I can do that within certain parameters. I also, through Busy Quill Press, published my father-in-law's memoir. He's a retired 4-star general. So Memoirs of a Nondescript 4-Star General, A Love Story, was the first book that came out with the Busy Quill imprint. And then I'm going to roll all of Ironshield over to that. And then I'm buying back the rights from Micah to the Arcana series, and I'm going to roll all of that over to my company as well. And then we'll see. I've had people make inquiries about, me taking on authors, and I'm thinking about what I want that to look like, because I know Quillhawk has a very specific business model that you guys work with, and Anatolian Press had a very specific business model that they work with. And so I'm just trying to decide what I really want that to look like before I take on
Yeah.
a lot of outside folks, because I want to make sure that I'm giving people the best experience, and that I'm not setting them up with unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's
Absolutely. Well, that's
all in
important.
process.
It's important to have your business model and vision, vision, whatever. It's like all the smart goals, the strategy behind that.
Mm-hmm.
More and more I talked with you, the more I realized just how multidimensional you are, because you talk about debate coach, and I'm like, what? And then you talk about, Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, what? And then you talk about photography, and I'm like, what? What else does she have up her sleeve? And then you got busy
All of it. My brain is Mary Poppins carpet bag. I have all of it in there. I'll pull out a hat rack. I mean, no problem. I do all of the things, and I love to do creative stuff.
Yeah.
In every facet. And so when I have a chance to learn some new creative process, I'm all in, and then I can, see if that shoe fits and how long I want to wear it. And
yeah, well, I look forward to continuing to follow you and see what else you pull out what rabbit you pull out of the hat.
yeah, there's always something, something.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your reviews.
Okay.
That's the one thing that as authors, we are so, in the beginning anyway, hooked on these reviews, right? Mm-hmm. That our readers give us.
They're our lifeblood, for sure.
Usually the first time it's like, our friends or family, they've read it. Mm-hmm. And then you go beyond, you reach beyond that.
You mean your friends and family actually post reviews? How do you? No, I'm kidding. No, I have a few that have done that.
You mean you don't hound them over dinner? You will not eat turkey until...
I literally have 2 family members, I think, who have actually read my books.
Oh, okay. So you've got a lot of outside community reviews.
Honestly, the writing community has been incredible. It's my author friends. We all support each other, and then I meet people through them. But anyway, you're back to your question. Sorry.
Yeah, my question is, tell me about one negative review that you have and what your thoughts, reactions were to that.
So this is going to sound horrible, but I don't think I've ever had what I would call a negative review.
Okay.
I'm going to modify your question to say a criticism that I got in a review.
Great.
So I did get a 4-star review from somebody, and it was for Rise of the Moon. That the criticism, it was still a 4-star review, but they said that they would have liked to see more diversity in the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fair cop, but I wasn't entirely sure what the person meant by that exactly, because the main character, usually when people say diversity, I think of cisgender, Caucasian, able people, right? That's what when you don't have diversity, that's what your characters are, right? They're
yeah.
But the main character's not white. There are gay characters. There are I guess I didn't have anybody with a disability in that particular book, but there was some diversity, but obviously not enough for this particular reader, which is a fair cop, right? Because there were a handful of characters, and maybe they were looking for something specific that maybe I didn't have reflected there. So okay, that's cool, and I do try to be sensitive to that, because to me, if I'm going to write about somebody who's not like me, that means I also need a sensitivity reader to make sure that I am respectfully treating a group that I can't claim, right?
Yes.
So when I wrote the 3rd book, Strength of Will, the main character is a Black woman of British descent.
Yeah.
Well, actually Nigerian descent, but raised in Britain. And so I had to do that, right? I had to find people who could read the voice and make sure that there was nothing in there that might be a trigger that I wasn't aware of, or, things like that. So I try to be very sensitive to that. But so obviously that criticism, whether or not I fully understood it / agreed with it / whatever, it obviously stuck in my brain, because now I'm very, very hyper aware of that when I write. And not in a bad way. I think actually criticism is good. How else are you going to learn anything? But I've never, the only person who I think has ever not particularly liked my books, it wasn't that they don't like my genre. And that was my stepdad, who read them. He said, "Your books are weird."
They are paranormal.
Yeah, it's like
they are.
I am probably the only genuinely weird person in my family. So like everybody else are like really relatively normal humans. I am definitely not. So all of the weird stuff just got, kind of concentrated in my 5'4" frame. But yeah, he's like, "Well, you write your suspense really well, but your books are just weird." So,
Yeah. And you can't do anything about that,
No. If a 93-year-old man reads my book and tells me it's weird, I'm just going to let him go with that. It is weird.
Try to read it. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yes.
Okay. I have some lightning round questions for you.
Okay. Yeah. I will do my best. I am not a, either or kind of person, but I'll try.
Okay. Pen or keyboard?
Generally keyboard.
Okay.
But I actually do prefer pen, but it's harder to edit. I'm starting to learn to use. Have you ever seen a Remarkable?
Remarkable? Mm-mm.
Yes. Have you seen these? It's basically, it looks like a Kindle, but you can write on it. It has a special pen, and you just push one little button and it transfers everything to fully formatted text. So my husband just gave me one, and I might start writing on that, because I actually do prefer to write by hand. I just don't want to have to retype everything.
I love it. Okay. My birthday is coming up in July. That's
what
I'm going to ask for.
All right. Put that on your list. Yep. Remarkable.
Okay. I love it. Okay. Writing in silence or with background music?
If I have to choose, I probably would go with background music. For whatever I think my characters would be listening to, that's what I play.
Okay. So what usually do you think that is that they're listening to?
Totally depends. So I actually have playlists created on Spotify for a couple of my characters from Rise of the Moon, and I just put them out there just for fun. But the main character for that was listening to a lot of him and, kind of, vampire rock, emo stuff. Because that was her vibe. She was kind of a goth chick, so that was her vibe.
There you go. Soundtracks for when your books become movies, right?
There you go.
Okay. First book you ever loved?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I'm gonna say first book I ever loved that I read and that stayed with me forever. Not one that was read to me, but one that I read, was probably Jane Emily by Patricia Clapp, which is a period horror story for kids. It is a novel, but it's a ghost story, and it has. I've reread it probably a dozen times. It always stayed with me. So. That one.
I love it. How about your dream writing retreat location?
Somewhere in the mountains. I'd be thrilled to be somewhere in the mountains of Scotland, preferably close to Loch Ness.
There you go.
Edinburgh would work just fine. Thank you very much. Or Perth. Those would be fine as well.
Okay, so if one of your books or series, whatever, became a movie, who would you cast as the lead? Okay,
so I'm gonna go with Veil of Secrets for this one. And there are co-protagonists, but the one that I wrote most was Esme Wren, who is the sort of the younger sister who has the psychic visions and whatnot. And I think probably the person I see playing her would be Jessica Brown Finley, who, if you've watched Downton Abbey, you might know her. She's been in a number of things, and she's definitely got the right look for that character, I think.
Who's going to play Randall?
Oh, if he could do a British accent, Josh Gad would be great. Um,
I mean, who Josh is?
hmm?
Who's the actor?
He played the snowman in Frozen. He did the voice work for that,
Okay.
and he's been in a million other things. But so he would be great. But I can think of there's a lot of actors who would be really good for that part. But like Josh Gad sort of has the right look for it, but I don't know if Josh Gad could pull off accents well. I don't know.
Okay.
He does a lot of voice work though.
He's
So
going to
maybe
listen to this podcast and then he's going to go out and start working on that.
Hey, Josh, I know you were a former speech competitor because I've seen your speeches about it. So, if you can do a British accent.
Yeah. Just tag him when you post about this podcast.
There we go.
Okay. Last one. In 3 words, describe your brand.
Describe my brand?
Yeah.
Spooky chick vibes.
Oh.
Because I always have strong female characters, and there's always something spooky in the book. So I'm going to go with spooky chick vibes.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I want to talk about your podcast. Let's talk about
love to talk about my podcast.
Tell us about your podcast.
So I have the incredible joy to be a co-host of the UNFREAKINGBELIEVABLE Podcast with Betsey Kulakowski and Jenny LaBranche, who I think may just go by LaBranche on our website. I can't remember. Anyway, but these 2 lovely ladies and I have folks onto the show to share stories about sort of a moment that was an inciting incident or a turning point in their lives that may have changed their perspective. You know this because you've been on my show. Our show, my show, whatever. You know what I mean? It's really not my show. It's their show, but it's okay. But we've had anything from supernatural events, moments of courage, stupid luck, miracles. So we've had folks on there talking about everything from a near-death experience to survival stories to UFO encounters, and we've had just an incredible wide array of guests. We've had authors, we've had directors, actors, other podcasters, ordinary folks who are just out there living their lives, doing their thing. The next episode we have coming out, which I don't know when this episode will drop, but our next one coming out July 27th, was with the actor Corin Nemec, who was Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and also he was in Stargate. He played Jonas Quinn, and he's been in, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 different films, either live or in voice. And we got to interview him, and he told us a great ghost story. So
awesome.
Yeah.
How long have you had this podcast? And I know that you've got a lot of downloads, so that's incredible.
Yeah, we've been around for about 1.5 years now. We are midway through our 2nd season. We put out twice a month, so on the 11th and the 27th of every month, because those are our lucky numbers. We wanted our first episode to drop on January 11th, so it was 111. It was an angel number. We're a little stitious, not superstitious, but a little stitious about stuff like that. And then 27 has always been my lucky number, so the 27th is the other day. And we're available on Spotify, Audible, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and now we're on YouTube as well, although it is voice only. So
well, congratulations. You guys
thank you.
Stuff, and I do look forward to your episodes, because you never know what you're going to get. And then when you listen to them, you're like, oh my God, those are incredible stories. Okay.
We've had some good ones.
Where can people find you, Jen?
So my website is JB Caine, CAINE, jbcaine.com. And I also have presence on all of the socials, although I'm most active on Instagram. So author JB Caine is the @ for all of those. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I think those are the 4 that I'm on. But I spend most of my most active stuff is on Facebook and Instagram, but mostly Instagram.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Are there any topics that we didn't cover that you want to?
Amy, I could sit and talk to you all day. So,
So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anytime you want to talk about paranormal experiences, just give me a call. We'll have another whole hour conversation just about weird paranormal stuff that's happened in my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to definitely put a little check mark on our calendars to see you at WriterCon.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll definitely chat about that over some good grub, some good food.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. Counting on some of that.
Me too. Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Miss JB Caine, for joining us today. Listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, please do subscribe, give us a rating, and share. We would love to grow our podcast to be like your podcast, Miss JB. That's incredible. 1 year. And still growing and still making a lot of impact. And so we're just, we're babies. We're just, I think 2 episodes only released. But anyway, so thank you so much for joining us for today. And without further ado, thank you so much, JB. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me on, Amy.
You're very welcome.